8 a.m., Boston, Massachusetts. The morning started like any other. I parked my beat-up Honda in the school lot, balancing my coffee in one hand and my lesson plan folder in the other. The chill of early spring still clung to the city, but inside the school, it was warm, buzzing with the usual sounds: locker doors slamming, kids laughing, sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. At 8:15 a.m., I was writing the day's objectives on the board when my phone vibrated in my pocket. The news headline made my stomach tighten. Unidentified viral outbreak causes mass panic in New York. Hospitals overwhelmed. Just another flu scare, I thought. Schools have been through it before: H1N1, COVID, even the occasional meningitis outbreak. Nothing new. By 9 a.m., something was different. The school intercom crackled to life. Principal Murray's voice was tight, urgent. Attention, all staff. Please check your emails immediately for an important district-wide update. I glanced at my students, restless high school seniors on the verge of graduation, before unlocking my phone. From Boston Public Schools District HQ. Subject: Emergency Lockdown Protocol, immediate action required. All schools must enter lockdown procedures. A violent outbreak is currently affecting downtown Boston. Remain indoors. Await further instruction from authorities. I barely had time to process before the first scream shattered the morning routine. The view from the second-floor windows overlooked the street. That's when I saw them. People running, stumbling, some collapsing. A delivery guy in a red hoodie tackled a woman on the sidewalk, his movements jerky, rapid. Cars screeched to a halt, horns blaring. Across the street, a police officer fired his gun, once, twice, but the man in the hoodie didn't go down. Mr. Callahan, one of my students, Lauren, whispered, "What's happening?" I forced myself to breathe. "We're staying here, away from the windows." A deep, guttural thump hit the classroom door. Then another. Someone was outside. The barricade wasn't going to hold forever. Coach Ramirez, or what used to be him, continued to slam against the door, each hit making the desks and chairs tremble. The other figures in the hallway had noticed the commotion. More hands, more bodies, pressing against the thin wooden door. "Okay, listen up," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. "We're not waiting for help. We're getting out." Lauren clutched her phone, scrolling through messages with shaking fingers. "My mom says she's stuck on I-93. Traffic's not moving. There are," she swallowed, her face paling. "There are people attacking cars." I nodded. "We're not going outside unless we have a plan. First, we need weapons, anything we can use." Brian grabbed a chair, testing its weight. "We can smash our way through if we have to." "No smashing," I said. "We move quietly. We don't know how many of those things are out there." Mason tore the legs off another chair, handing one to Kelsey. "We use these like bats." I moved to the classroom's emergency window. It faced the side alley behind the school. No signs of movement. A dumpster sat beneath, about 10 feet below. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than staying trapped. "We go out the window," I said. "One at a time. Quiet and fast." Kelsey's eyes widened. "What if we get stuck out there?" "Then we find another way." I turned to Brian. "You first. Make sure it's clear." He nodded, shoving open the window. The crisp air rushed in, bringing with it the distant sound of sirens and screams. Brian climbed onto the ledge, hesitated for just a second, then dropped. The impact echoed in the quiet room. "All good," he whisper shouted from below. Mason helped Lauren up next, then Kelsey. One by one, the students made their way down. I stayed by the door, heart pounding as the wood began to crack. Ramirez's snarling breath seeped through the gaps. It was my turn. I took a final glance around the room, our safe haven turned death trap, before climbing onto the ledge and dropping down into the unknown. The air inside the classroom was thick with fear. The only sound was the rhythmic pounding on the barricaded door as Coach Ramirez, or what was left of him, continued his relentless assault. Every now and then, his guttural groans were joined by distant screams from elsewhere in the school. We weren't alone in this nightmare. "We can't just sit here," Brian muttered, clenching and unclenching his fists. "We need a way out." He was right. Staying locked inside a classroom was a death sentence. Supplies were limited, and judging by the chaos outside, help wasn't coming. If we waited too long, we'd be cornered. I forced myself to think, scanning the room for options. The windows overlooked the school's side parking lot. Too high to jump from, but if we could get to the fire escape. "The science lab," I whispered, an idea forming. "There's a back door that leads to the faculty parking lot. If we can get there." A loud crack from the hallway cut me off. The glass in the door window splintered under Ramirez's weight, his bloodied hands reaching through the jagged opening, clawing at the air. The students shrieked, pressing themselves against the back wall. "Time's up," I said, grabbing a metal chair and jamming it against the window to block his reach. "We move. Now." Mason and Brian sprang into action, helping me clear the barricade. Lauren clung to Kelsey, whispering frantic prayers under her breath. I could feel the panic rising, but we had no choice. We had to go. As soon as the path was clear, I cracked open the door, peeking out into the hallway. Empty. But the blood smeared along the lockers and the half-eaten body of a teacher sprawled across the floor told me that wouldn't last. "Single file," I whispered. "Quiet. Stay low." We slipped out of the classroom, the hallway stretching before us like the mouth of a cave, dark and full of unseen threats. The science lab was 2 doors down. It felt like miles. Halfway there, a door slammed open behind us. A student, one I barely recognized, stumbled into the hallway, his face twisted in pain. Blood soaked his shirt. They bit me," he gasped, collapsing to his knees. "Oh God." Before he could say anything else, a figure burst from the classroom behind him. A woman. Or at least, what had once been one. Her face was mangled, her mouth dark, dripping mauve teeth and blood. I didn't think. I acted. Grabbing a fire extinguisher from the wall, I swung it with every ounce of strength I had. The impact sent the creature sprawling, but she wasn't dead. She writhed on the floor, snarling. "Move," I shouted. Brian grabbed Lauren's hand, yanking her toward the lab. Mason and Kelsey followed, eyes wide with terror. I stayed back just long enough to deliver another crushing blow to the thing's skull, silencing it for good. We burst into the science lab. I locked the door behind us and turned to face my students. "We're getting out of here," I said, breathing hard. "But we're going to have to fight for it." The lock clicked into place as I secured the science lab door behind us. For now, we had a moment of safety, but I knew it wouldn't last. The air was thick with the smell of chemicals, and our ragged breathing filled the space as we tried to process what had just happened. Lauren was shaking, clutching Kelsey's arm, her face ghostly pale. Brian paced near the lab benches, gripping a Bunsen burner stand like a weapon. Mason stood by the window, peeking through the blinds at the parking lot below. "We need to go now," Brian said, his voice edged with urgency. "That door's not going to hold forever. We can't just run out blind." I shot back, rubbing a hand over my face. "We need a plan." "What plan?" "The school's a goddamn war zone," Mason muttered, his hands clenched into fists. "There's no one coming for us." I knew he was right. We were alone. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to think. Okay, the faculty parking lot is just outside this room. If we can break the window, we can climb down and make a run for it. Lauren's eyes widened. "Climb down? From the 2nd floor? We don't have a choice." I moved to the supply closet and yanked it open, rummaging through the shelves until I found what I was looking for, several lengths of heavy-duty tubing. "We tie these together. They're strong enough to hold our weight." Kelsey nodded, stepping forward to help. "I used to rock clung. If we secure it to the radiator, it should hold." Mason snorted. "And if it doesn't? Then we find another way," I said firmly. "But right now, this is our best shot." As we worked, a loud crash came from the hallway. The door handle rattled violently. "Shit," Brian hissed, gripping his makeshift weapon. "They found us." "Keep working," I ordered, grabbing a scalpel from one of the counters. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. Another slam against the door. The wood groaned, splintering slightly. "We're out of time," Kelsey whispered, knotting the last length of tubing. "It's ready." I moved to the window and threw a stool through the glass. The sound was deafening. Shards rained down on the pavement below. I turned to my students. "I'll go first. If it holds, follow me. One at a time." No hesitation. They nodded, fear written all over their faces. I wrapped the tubing around my hands and climbed onto the sill, my heart hammering. The hallway door splintered behind me. Then I dropped into the unknown. The tubing strained under my weight as I dangled from the broken window, my fingers clenched tight around the makeshift rope. My heart pounded against my ribs. Below me, the faculty parking lot looked impossibly far away. "Hold on," Brian called from above. He was next, gripping the radiator where we had tied the tubing, his knuckles white. The hallway door burst open. A guttural growl filled the lab. "Go, go, go," I yelled. I swung my legs, pushing away from the building to slow my descent. My boots scraped against the brick, but I kept moving, forcing myself to breathe through the panic clawing at my throat. The tubing held. So far. Mason followed, shimmying down just as Brian began his descent. Above, Lauren hesitated at the window, her breath ragged. I can't, she stammered. Kelsey was right behind her. You have to. They're coming. A shriek tore through the lab as something lunged at them. Lauren screamed, but Kelsey shoved her forward. She grabbed the tubing and slid down, sobbing as she gripped for dear life. I hit the ground, knees bending to absorb the impact. No time to waste. I scanned the parking lot, abandoned cars, shattered glass, blood streaks. No movement. Yet. Move away from the drop zone. I barked, pulling Mason aside as Brian landed beside us. Lauren was still struggling, halfway down. Then, a crash. The radiator snapped loose from the wall. Lauren and Kelsey screamed as the tubing went slack. They fell. I barely had time to react before they hit the ground. Kelsey landed hard, clutching her ankle, a sharp cry escaping her lips. Lauren rolled onto her side, gasping for breath. Are you okay? I crouched beside them, checking for injuries. Kelsey shook her head, wincing. Ankle. I think it's sprained. Above, guttural moans and shuffling feet crowded the window. Dark figures leaned out, sniffing, searching. We need to go. Now, Mason urged, helping Lauren to her feet. I looked at Kelsey. Can you walk? She nodded, biting her lip. Not fast. Brian grabbed her arm, throwing it over his shoulder. Then I'll help you. We turned to the lot. Rows of cars stretched before us. Some had shattered windows. Others sat idle, engines still running. I scanned for keys, for an open door, for anything that could get us out of here. And then I heard it. The unmistakable sound of something dragging itself across the pavement. We weren't alone. The dragging sound grew louder, scraping against the pavement like nails on stone. I motioned for the others to keep quiet, pressing myself against the side of a battered SUV. Mason peeked over the hood, as darting across the lot. There, he whispered, pointing toward an old blue pickup truck. Its driver's side door was ajar. The engine was off, but the keys, the keys, dangled from the ignition. Brian helped Kelsey hobble toward the truck, while I moved ahead, checking for any unwanted surprises. The lot was eerily silent except for the occasional distant scream. The city was burning, collapsing around us, but for now, this parking lot was our world. Lauren climbed into the passenger seat, her hands shaking as she fumbled with the locks. Mason hopped into the back, gripping a tire iron like his life depended on it. Brian carefully lifted Kelsey onto the seat before slamming the door shut. I took one last look around before climbing into the driver's seat. The keys were cold in my hands. I turned them. Nothing. Just a dry click. No, 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 I muttered, twisting the keys again. The engine coughed once, twice, then roared to life. A figure stumbled from behind a sedan, dragging its torn leg behind it. Another appeared from the shadows of a nearby bus, its dead, milky eyes locking onto us. Go, Mason shouted. I slammed my foot on the gas. The truck lurched forward, bouncing over a curb as I yanked the wheel toward the exit. Bodies emerged from between the cars, shambling toward us, their hungry moans filling the air. We tore out of the parking lot, tires screeching. My hands gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. The streets ahead were chaos, abandoned vehicles, smoke rising from burning buildings, people running, screaming, dying. Where are we going? Lauren asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I swallowed hard. We need to get out of the city. Fast. North, Brian said. We head for the outskirts. Maybe find a gas station, supplies. No, Mason cut in. Too many people will have the same idea. We need somewhere isolated, somewhere safe. There's a cabin, Kelsey said weakly from the back seat. My uncle's. It's about an hour outside the city, near Ashland. No one goes up there. I met Brian's eyes in the rearview mirror. He nodded. That's our best shot. I pressed down on the gas, weaving through the wreckage of Boston, the infected growing denser behind us. The city was lost. Now, survival was all that mattered. And we had a long road ahead. The city shrank in the rearview mirror, its skyline blurred by smoke and fire. I kept my hands tight on the wheel, my knuckles pale. The road ahead was chaos, wrecked cars, abandoned belongings, and figures moving in the distance, some running, some stumbling. Some weren't human anymore. Brian sat beside me, his jaw clenched as he scanned the road for trouble. Mason and Lauren huddled in the back, tending to Kelsey, whose face was twisted in pain from her injured ankle. We're not stopping, I muttered, swerving around a crashed sedan. No argument here, Brian said, gripping the dashboard as we dodged another wreck. A sign loomed ahead, Route 9 West, Framingham, Worcester. If we kept moving, we'd reach Ashland in less than an hour. If the roads held. Gas. Mason asked from the back. Half a tank, I said. Enough to get us there. Maybe. Lauren turned from the window, her voice tight. What if we don't make it? What if the roads are blocked? We find another way, I said. We don't stop. We don't go back. The words felt final, heavy, but it was the truth. The city was gone. The only way was forward. A wrecked police barricade came into view ahead, twisted metal and overturned vehicles blocking half the highway. Beyond it, a group of figures shambled in the sunlight, their heads snapping toward us as the engine growled. Hold on, I muttered, tightening my grip. I floored the gas. The truck barreled forward, tires shrieking as we veered around the barricade. A few of them lunged, reaching for the doors, their fingers scraping against the windows. Brian swung his arm, slamming the butt of a rifle against one of the hands clawing at his side. Keep going, he shouted. We sped past them, leaving the figures shrinking in the mirror. I kept my foot down, the truck eating the miles between us and safety. The highway had given way to smaller roads, winding through dense forest. The change was eerie, no more burning buildings, no more screaming. Just silence, broken only by the hum of the engine and Kelsey's pained breaths. Mason shifted beside her, adjusting the makeshift bandage we had wrapped around her ankle. Almost there. Lauren peered at the map in her lap, tracing a finger along the back roads leading to the cabin. Turn left at the next fork, she said. Then follow the dirt road. I nodded. The truck jostled as we left the pavement, dust billowing around us. The trees thickened, enclosing us in shadow. And then we saw it. A wooden cabin, nestled between the trees, a worn porch wrapped around the front. It looked intact, untouched, safe. For now. I cut the engine. The silence was deafening. We made it. Lauren breathed. Brian exhaled, gripping his rifle. Let's hope it stays that way. I stepped out, scanning the woods. No movement. No sound. The real test was about to begin. The moment we stepped inside, relief washed over me. The cabin smelled of dust and old wood, but it was intact. No broken windows, no signs of struggle. A safe haven, at least for now. Lauren immediately helped Kelsey onto the worn-out couch near the fireplace. Mason secured the doors and checked the windows while Brian and I took stock of what we had. The kitchen cabinets were stocked with canned goods and bottled water Kelsey's uncle had prepared well. We found an old hunting rifle mounted above the fireplace and a box of ammunition in a drawer. It wasn't much, but it was something. I glanced at the small, battery-operated radio sitting on the kitchen counter. Hoping against hope, I twisted the dial, searching for anything beyond static. Then I heard it. A voice. Crackling but unmistakable. This is Staff Sergeant Riley of the 172nd Infantry Regiment. We are en route from Providence to Hampton Beach. Civilian extraction in progress. If anyone can hear this, respond immediately. I fumbled for the radio's push-to-talk button. Hello? This is, I hesitated, exchanging looks with Brian and Mason. This is Callahan. We're a group of survivors, just outside Ashland. We need help. A pause. Then, Callahan, how many of you? 5, I said. 1 injured, but we can move. Copy that, Callahan. We don't have much time. Rendezvous at Hopkinton Grill, Route 85. We'll be there in 17 minutes. If you're late, we're gone. 17 minutes. My heart hammered. I turned to the others. We have to go. Now. Kelsey groaned, trying to sit up. I can make it, she said through gritted teeth. Brian slung her arm over his shoulder. No choice. Let's move. Mason grabbed the rifle and spare ammo, while Lauren stuffed supplies into a backpack. I checked my watch. 16 minutes. We bolted out the door, rushing to the truck. The woods around us were eerily silent, the sky growing darker as smoke from burning cities drifted in. I slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and floored it. The road was rough, winding through thick forest, but I pushed the truck as fast as it would go. Branches scraped against the sides, the tires skidding over loose gravel. 15 minutes, Lauren warned, checking the dashboard clock. The highway was just ahead. I gritted my teeth, swerving around an overturned SUV. Then, in the distance, figures on the road. Moving. I tightened my grip on the wheel. Hold on. We weren't the only ones racing against time. The truck screeched to a stop in front of the Hopkinton Grill. The parking lot was nearly deserted except for 3 military vehicles idling near the entrance, their camouflage patterns blending into the smoke-stained sky. Soldiers, clad in full tactical gear, stood with weapons at the ready. "Go! Move!" a soldier shouted, waving us forward. Brian half-carried Kelsey as we ran toward them. Two soldiers grabbed her, helping her into the back of an armored truck. A medic immediately crouched beside her, checking her ankle while another flashed a light into her eyes. "Any of you bitten?" one of the soldiers demanded, his rifle steady in his hands. His eyes flickered between us, hard and calculating. "No," I said quickly, my chest heaving. "We're clean." "Check them," the soldier barked. More hands were on us, rolling up our sleeves, lifting collars, checking for wounds. My pulse pounded, but we were clear. "They're good. Get in." The five of us scrambled into the back of the truck, the heavy doors slamming shut behind us. The vehicle lurched forward immediately, engines roaring as the convoy began its desperate escape. The radio crackled. Movement on the left, multiple hostiles inbound. Gunfire erupted outside, sharp and unrelenting. The truck swayed as the driver pushed the speed to its limit. I grabbed onto a metal bar to keep from toppling over. Lauren flinched at the deafening sound of mounted machine guns opening fire. Through a small reinforced window, I saw figures rushing from the tree line. Dozens of them, their ragged forms sprinting toward us. The mounted gunner atop one of the Humvees unleashed a storm of bullets, bodies jerking violently as they were torn apart. The creatures kept coming. "We won't make it through the highway," a soldier yelled over the comms. "Divert through Route 1, another voice ordered. "Hold formation." The truck jerked violently to the right, tires screeching as we barreled onto a side road. Explosions echoed in the distance, plumes of black smoke rising into the sky. Kelsey groaned in pain, gripping her ankle. The medic worked quickly, wrapping her leg as the truck bounced over rough terrain. Brian wiped sweat from his face. "Where are they taking us?" A soldier sitting near the door looked at him grimly. "Hampton Beach. There's a warship waiting offshore." I exhaled, the weight of everything pressing down on me. We weren't safe yet, but at least we had a chance. The convoy tore through the last stretch of highway, engines roaring, bullets flying. Machine gunners on the Humvees rained down suppression fire, keeping the infected from overwhelming our position. The distant echo of explosions trembled through the earth as the military fought to hold the last evacuation route open. We had made it, against all odds. Hampton Beach came into view, and beyond it, the dark gray waves of the Atlantic. The sight sent a surge of relief through me. A cluster of military boats was waiting just offshore, bobbing with the tide. Large ships loomed farther out, their steel hulls housing thousands of survivors. Smoke curled in the distance where fires still burned along the coastline. "Everyone out. Move." A sergeant barked as the trucks skidded to a stop near the loading docks. The soldiers jumped down first, securing the perimeter. We followed, helping Kelsey out as best we could. The moment our feet hit the pavement, the acrid scent of salt, sweat, and smoke filled my lungs. We were here. We were almost safe. The soldiers corralled us toward the nearest boat, a heavily armed transport vessel already packed with civilians and wounded troops. Before stepping on board, we were examined once more, quick scans for bites, wounds, or signs of infection. The tension in the air was suffocating. One wrong mark on your body, and you weren't getting on. "We're clean," I told the medic, checking me, my voice hoarse. He nodded and waved me forward. One by one, we passed inspection and boarded. The boat's engine roared to life, and within minutes, we were speeding away from the shore. I looked back. The beach was a battlefield. Soldiers held the line, pushing back the infected, buying time for the final boats to launch. Some wouldn't make it. I clenched my fists, my heart heavy. Brian sat beside me, staring blankly at the horizon. Kelsey leaned against Lauren, exhausted but alive. Mason clutched the rifle he had taken from the cabin, his knuckles white. No one spoke. No one needed to. The islands came into view after a short but tense ride. Rows of ships dotted the waters, naval destroyers, converted cruise liners, civilian yachts. Makeshift reception centers were already being set up on the largest island. Helicopters buzzed overhead, ferrying supplies and personnel. We had made it. For the first time in hours, I allowed myself to breathe. The world we knew was gone. But here, on these waters, survival wasn't just a desperate fight. It was a chance to start again.